Welcome everyone. Let's start. So, just taking 5 minutes to center the mind and bringing the mind to the breath. The eyes can be open, closed, doesn't matter. Just bringing the mind to the awareness of the breathing. If the mind gets distracted, again bringing it back to the awareness of the breathing. And if any thought is seen, just being aware of the thought and bringing the mind back to the awareness of the breathing. Not getting engaged in the story right now. We can also manipulate the length of breath. If we want to focus more on it, we can try to relax it more, make it slower, totally being with it. Or if it helps to make it faster, we can do that. Just relaxing the mind in the body, which is the home of the mind. We can be aware of all the noises, sounds that are there, just letting them come and letting them go. All the noises that you have around you. Being aware, not sticking, and if sticking or grasping at anything comes, we just are aware of it. Let it come, let it go. Sticking to the breath. And for a moment, also bringing our attention to this awareness which is present. Vast and open awareness. So just being aware of being aware. So I'm going to play a teaching of Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, and she's responding to a question on, somebody has asked again, it's a Buddhist uh, terminology in between, but I'm more focusing on the general part about thoughts, being aware of the thoughts while we are thinking. While we are thinking, we can parallelly be aware also that I'm thinking. So she's sharing something on that, and I hope we can get at least some bit of it which can be of practical benefit for all of us. So it could be a meditative teaching. You can remain in a state of mindful breathing and still listen to the answer.
But nonetheless, general awareness, meaning like mindfulness of being clear, that we can certainly do while we are thinking. I mean, the instruction is to be to observe the mind, to be aware of the mind at all times, right? Normally we are not aware of the mind because we're swept along by the mind. So a large part of the practice is to step back and observe the mind while it is thinking, right? We are not trying to not think. It's not anti-thought. It's pro being conscious of our thoughts. While we are thinking, we know we are thinking, right? So we are not swept along by the thoughts, but we utilize the thoughts and we know the thoughts. And the more we are able to do that, then gradually the more we are also able to stay in that open, spacious nature of the mind while we are thinking.
So just for those of us, since I said it's Buddhist terminology, so nature of the mind, referring to this presence of pure awareness, which is everywhere, all pervading in us and around us. So that is when we are identified with that pure awareness, that's the nature of the mind.
You know, like if you think of the sky, then in the sky there are birds, whole flocks of birds, there are aeroplanes, there are bees, there are flies, lots of things happening in the sky, but it doesn't hurt the sky. Do you understand? So the more we become stabilized in our ability to remain in the nature of the mind, the more that will display, right? Because the mind is not just empty, right? It is also luminous. Luminous means everything appears within it, right? So therefore, thinking, emotions, all the manifestations of our samsaric consciousness can appear. It emanates, but because its nature is empty, we are not caught by it. The problem is that normally when we think, our thoughts seem so solid, so real, so true. I think this, therefore it must be true, right? And we grasp at that. And so our thinking creates a lot of inner disconsonance because we are grasping at the mind. But if we recognize the empty nature of thoughts and feelings, which is the same as the nature of the mind, then they're no longer solid. They're just apparitions which arise and disappear, right? But at that point, the mind is very, very clear. The mind is very, very open and spacious and can see with a tremendous clarity. It's waking up, Laura, right? I mean, the whole point is that we are asleep. We're sleepwalking. We think this is being awake. It's not awake. We're still asleep. We're still projecting our dreams and living our dreams. Now we're awake. And when you're awake, that consciousness is so much more vivid, so much more clarity, that we recognize our ordinary conceptual thinking mind is just dreams. But when we can recognize that because we are now awake, then we can utilize the mind. The mind becomes so much, much more useful, our thinking. So that's the point. So then the two go together. You know, in the sky, there are clouds, but we know there are clouds in the sky. We're not just looking at the clouds, we also see the sky. We also see the space. And anyone can do that. It's not just waiting to become a Buddha. You're a Buddha, it's just that they're in that state 24/7, right? But even ordinary people can get into that state for, you know, maybe not so long, but they can definitely experience it. And that's the encouragement that, yes, this is possible. I can do this. I just need to practice. So, I mean, the whole point is just, first of all, to begin to understand the thoughts, to step back and see thoughts as thoughts, not as me and mine, not as real, don't believe everything you think, right? That is the slogan. Don't believe everything you think. I think it must be true. That's nonsense. It's just a thought. Then as we look at it, we begin to see that it is just a thought. They are just bubbles, and bubbles are empty. And maybe between, as the thought patterns go slower, 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 there is a gap, because now we're watching and we see the gap between the previous thought and the next thought. And that in itself is the nature of the mind, right? The sky, the clouds part, there's the sky. All right, the clouds go back, but now we know there is sky. So then the whole practice is to get more gaps and make them wider and wider, and see the interconnection. How all these thoughts, like clouds, arise in the sky of the mind, but they arise and they disappear again. But they could not be there if it was not for the sky. This is the whole point, that they are a manifestation of the nature of the mind, but we don't recognize that. Because we don't recognize the nature, we only recognize their manifestation, like clouds. We don't recognize clouds come from the sky. They are the sky. They're a manifestation of the sky. And we get fixated on the clouds and we don't see where they are coming from. That's all. And we all have that. That's the problem. That's the thing. We all have it, but we don't recognize it. Moment to moment, you couldn't think, you couldn't hear, you couldn't see if we didn't have this knowing quality of the mind, this consciousness. But we don't recognize the consciousness because we're so caught up in our thinking. So that's all. I mean, it's really very, very simple. But we are so habituated to being fascinated by our thoughts that we can't let that go and see what is behind it all. So that's the practice, you know. That's what all these lamas are trying to tell us how to do. And why that first glimpse is so important, because then it shows us, yes, there is a whole different shift in consciousness, which is within us, if we could only recognize it. Anyway, yes.
So I think good time to practice what was being shared. Maybe we'll take around 10 minutes and use her instruction. So just bringing our attention back to breath. So we begin with this awareness of breathing, and then we become aware of being aware. I'm just sharing it in the beginning, and then we can do. So, and then we just become aware of being aware and imagine ourselves as this vast open sky of awareness in which thoughts, feelings, sensations can come and go, can come and go. And if any thoughts or feelings or sensations, they will arise. Since we are slowing everything down, we will also become aware of the gaps between the thoughts. So just trying to extend those moment of gaps. Let's do this practice for 10 minutes. And as she was very beautifully suggesting, that not to believe into our thoughts rigidly. So if something comes, anything comes which is a matter of bother or whatever, very rigid storyline which appears in consciousness, we can just let it go. It's just a thought, empty bubble. So we can just let it arise and let it go. not buying into the storylines at all, just being fully here and now, being aware of being aware. And knowing that this awareness is our shared being, this is stretching into all of us. It's the same awareness in me as in you and as in other beings around us. So that's the God's being or shared being. That's how we are interconnected. Just extending the practice to last 5 minutes. Stabilizing our stance as awareness. Consciously knowing ourselves as awareness. As this presence of consciousness that is present, because of which we are conscious of everything. So in the beginning with the awareness of breathing, and for a long time stretching it, letting the thoughts come, go, and then slowly taking stance just as awareness. And if many a times thoughts and feelings become very overwhelming, and even when we are trying to let go, they are not able to, we are not able to let go. It happens many a times because of our soft spots that are there. So in those moments, just having an understanding that these are just passing clouds, and not wanting anything from the dictates of thoughts, just letting them pass, enduring letting them pass. So we can take any reflection if there is any towards the end, last 2-3 minutes. Would anyone want to share or anything?
Yeah, namaste, Monica ji.
Yes, Dhawanji.
Yeah, what you just said is very true that when there are strong currents or strong emotions, uh, it's enduring is the only option. Just within 2-3 minutes, they can die if we focus on the breath. I've personally experimented with that, and it works. But we have to give it time. That those 2 minutes are very difficult, or whatever time it takes are a little difficult, but the only option is to endure. Yeah, that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It can many times even stretch for depending upon how sticky that something is which is bothering us. If it's more sticky and more connected with our ego self, then it can take even a bit longer, many days. And still, as Dhavalji was sharing, that we just have to endure, not wanting anything from the dictates of the story in the head, knowing that it's an old pattern beginning to show up, so that it can be cleansed and go away forever. Forever means whenever it arises up again. But all that we do is to endure. Yes, absolutely. And Mother has also suggested enduring. And to again, I think both things can be used alternatively. We can either use the support of breath to endure, and many a times we use the support of Mother's name to endure. Yeah. Anything else? Anyone?
Monica,
Yes, yes.
every technique, everyone talks of the gap between the breaths. And I am absolutely unable to see it, feel it. Is that the mind which is going on telling me that I can't see the gap? Where is that gap? How do people feel it?
Yeah. So, one very practical technique to know the gap is you slow down your breathing and make one little gap between your breathing. So, the in breath, and then before giving out the out breath, you take a gap.
Also, consciously make a gap.
In the beginning, yes, yes. So, just being aware of how it is to look at a gap.
Um, can I share
Of
additionally to
course,
that?
yeah, please.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so yes, this technique works very well. Taking the gap, you realize the shunyata at that time. Very, it just appears, and I use it as a technique to even break down strong emotions. And then suddenly, in the next breath or 2 3 breaths, if you continue to do so, you let go of that strong emotion. This works at a very physical level and enters into the subtle. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, that question and the answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think breath is really a lot of power, and many practices are totally based on breath, that dissolving anger, as Dhavalji was sharing, any strong emotion, and cutting through anger through the blade of breath, if one can say. So they say that mind is the rider and horse is the breath. So mind is riding on the horse of breath. And since all these emanations of either strong disturbing emotions, they are arising from uh, in that empty awareness. So when we manipulate the breathing, or when we stick to breathing, we are able to cut through, as Dhavalji was sharing, very intense emotions, not giving power to those emotions, but you ride on the horse consciously, and hence you're not able to get into grip of those disturbing emotions. So yeah, it's very powerful. Yeah.
Also, one observation, which is this, that when we meditate, there are two effects. One is automatic, because of the entire relaxation of the system, the breath automatically slows down, which in turn slows down the thoughts. Or if there are sometimes very fast whirling thoughts, so the other technique, bidirectionality, works is to just consciously even slow down the breath. And when you slow down the breath, the thought starts reducing its whirlings, and slowly you can tame gradually, but it's a slow process, but it does happen, is what I have observed. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. I think both works very nice depending upon context to context, either increasing the speed of breathing to cut through the disturbing cloud, or to, it's like, the image I use here is that, imagine that you have to move, you are a rugby player, and you have to move from one goalpost to the other goalpost, and you have a rugby ball in the hand, right? And this, imagine that we are sticking to the breath. So this is my rugby ball in the hand, and all the players around me are trying to get the ball out of my hand, right? So because the moment I get lost in the thought, I slip away from the consciousness of breathing. We see that. So all the players, the overwhelming storylines, feelings, emotions, they are trying to absorb my attention into them, so that I lose the awareness of breathing. You know. So, and what I have to do is I have to cut through all this disturbance that is there, just not letting the ball go. So many a times, as I think Dhavalji was pointing out, many times in this case of trying to find our way towards ease and stability through many intense emotions, this not letting the ball go, and just either with fast breathing or as prescribed slow breathing, both work really well. I think we have to experiment, and we just cut through, and that overwhelming cloud is then not there anymore. It's not overwhelming anymore after either a couple of days, or maybe hours or minutes, or maybe months, I don't know, can depend upon the severity of the emotion. So yes, this is really practically very powerful. One has to just experiment with breath, and then we know how it works. So thanks for bringing that up, both Sulakshna ji and Dhaval ji. Yeah. Any last comments before we end? Okay, so wishing you a happy day, happy night, afternoon, and thank you for joining in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you. Bye bye.